Hello and welcome, everyone. As the vacation period is coming to an end and we are coming back to work, our children are coming back to school, so are we ready to come back with another episode of the Less as Expert, an event that is brought to you by the soft skills stream of the business analysis community. As always, the topic for every presentation is based by the selection of our audience. So I encourage each and every one of you to stay till the end of the episode to see what will be the topic of episode 14, as it will be you who will have the opportunity to vote for that topic of that episode. So please bear with us. But in the last episode that was streamed at the end of last month, majority of you has selected that the topic of storytelling will be the one that is most interesting for you. And today, in my opinion, I think we will talk about one of the most underrated skills in the soft skill overall, because storytelling has been overlooked in so many presentations and so many topics about public speaking that I heard over the years. And actually, it's a great topic to have, and I have great set of experts to discuss this topic with us. So without further ado, let me introduce them one by one, starting with our first expert, Mamed Abdulaev. So Mamed, it's so good to have you here with us today. So can you please introduce yourself to our audience, tell a couple of words about yourself.
Thank you very much for having me, Jan. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Mamed, and at EPAM I work as a soft skills trainer and manage our cultural intelligence learning portfolio, helping teams across the globe collaborate more effectively. My path into storytelling actually started earlier. I spent time working as a film producer and director, organizing shoots, working with actors, learning the craft of engaging an audience. Later, I brought that experience into training, where I've spent over 10 years helping professionals build communication, presentation, and storytelling skills. So stories, for me, aren't just entertainment. I agree with it being a little bit underrated. They're how we make ideas stick and connect people.
So good to have you here. And actually, when I initially interviewed you for this episode, I actually had no idea about your past experience as a producer and director, and that actually blew my mind away when I learned about this. So good to have you here with us.
Thank
We
you.
also
Okay, lower your expectations. I've only had a couple of years, okay, working that mostly as a freelancer, but yeah, I do have it and I find it relevant to mention. Thank you.
And still, it could be like riding a bicycle, right? Well, you cannot forget about this. So we'll see. But also, we have another expert, and that's my personal friend, Nadia Harris. So, Nadia, welcome to our episode today. So good to have you here with us as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Really a pleasure to be here.
And also, last but not least, we have Gordon, who is, I think, Gordon, I've known you the longest of the entire crew here today. We've known each other for, I don't know, if I think it's 6 or 7 years now.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And could you please introduce yourself to our audience as well?
Yeah, so professional background, business analyst, nearly 30 years now. Seems a very, very long time. But
and you look so young. So, like, did you start at 10?
Oh, it's very kind of you. I'll be 54 at Christmas. But anybody that's known me for any length of time knows that I'm always doing kind of multiple other things apart from the day job stuff. So I've been a member of the Agile Competency Centre kind of since I joined EPAM back in 2014. I've run a lot of the Agile trainings and scaled Agile trainings for them. I've in recent years been putting together my own trainings around presentation skills and communication skills, particularly online. A lot of people will have seen me pop up, kind of at conferences, either as a speaker or facilitating other speakers and moderating panel discussions, kind of doing what you're doing today, all of those sorts of things. So I'm very passionate about helping people present better, particularly online, but I have helped people with in-person presentations as well, and lots of other things I've done over my life. I've been a dance teacher for 12 years. I run an AI news podcast with a colleague of mine, Govind Shukla. So we're on episode 8 of that now. I've got a couple of YouTube channels, just small ones. And also discovered I was actually ADHD a few years ago as well.
And you actually have also one more thing in common with our guest Nadia, because you both are passionate about the remote work.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I'm sure this will also come in handy in today's conversation.
Definitely.
So those are the experts. So without further ado, let us begin with the conversation. So as always, I'm stopping sharing the screen just so we can have a more friendly and more face-to-face connection and conversation. And the first question which I have for you, and what I like to always open with, is to connect the topic of the discussion, meaning storytelling, with your day-to-day job, with your day-to-day performance, with your day-to-day work. That said, let's start, Gordon, with you, as you were the last one to introduce yourself. What does the storytelling mean for you in the context of your day-to-day work as a business analyst or as a podcaster?
Well, certainly, I mean, if I think about it in my kind of project role stuff, storytelling is influence. It really is simple as that, influencing decisions, influencing levels of trust. You need to be able to tell a coherent story, both that you telling it, but also you need to be able to get a coherent story out of the people that are trying to give you the requirements, because often a lot of stuff is disconnected, or there's things that people are doing, and when you come to try and articulate that back to perhaps a development team, being able to take all those elements of what's going on and why they're happening and what's the outcome that you want from it, ultimately that's all story. You need to be able to give a clear, understandable, compelling narrative for why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Nadia, you also as a fellow podcaster.
Yeah, God, don't say that, because my podcast should be brought back to life, and I dream about it at night. I mean, it's a nightmare. I mean,
I feel so bad about it because I was the last guest on the last episode, and after that you stopped doing the podcast, and I feel so guilty about it.
I would look at it this way: you're so great that no one would then live up to our expectations, so we had to stop. Okay, so let's look at it that way. You're welcome. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what Gordon said, that it's power, but it's also, in my eyes, based on what I do and how I also perceive storytelling, it's also authenticity. And I think, people connect with experiences, and we connect with how things are making us feel. So that's why whenever we have stories, then people can find in these stories something inspirational for them, or something that maybe happened to them, something similar, like this kind of like sparkle or whatever it is that just empowers them to maybe make a decision themselves, or maybe solves a particular problem, or it's just compelling, right, for whatever reason. So in my eyes, whenever we share raw facts, that definitely doesn't land the same way. But if it gives you this feeling of something, whatever that is, well, we as human beings, we are just constructed this way, so to say, that we remember how things made us feel. And that's the power of storytelling.
I think this is what you mentioned is a very important sentence, that people will not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
And I think
it's a Maya Angelou quote.
Yeah.
Mamed, what about yourself? How does storytelling fit into your work?
Yeah, generally it's difficult to add anything. I totally second what my colleague said. As for my work and how it fits, for me, again, repeating myself, storytelling is more than just sharing any anecdotes. It's a structured way of making information stick, right? So in soft skills and cultural intelligence, I see it as a bridge between head and heart. Facts, they inform, but stories connect, right? So in training, a story makes abstract ideas tangible. And in business, it turns data into meaning, right? So for me, it's how we transform raw information into something memorable and actionable.
But this is also a question which I have, that sometimes there are those people in the audience that are more focused on the data itself and more focused on the result, not necessarily about the entire journey. Some people also prefer to have the journey and then have the outcome at the very end. Like when you read a good criminal book, you want to learn on the last page that was the gardener who was doing all the killing, right? Where to strike the balance between the amount of story and journey and the facts. How can you share with our audience the tips on how does that work for you? Maybe Nadia, maybe let's start with you on this one.
That's both a tough and relatively easy question. So 2 in 1. Why tough? Because there is no one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, some people are this way, and it's also this way from a cultural perspective that they want to get straight to the point. So we have both. Maybe it's not storytelling, but still it does play a role in all of this, that we have high context, low context cultures, right? We have cultures where we also have some small talk and, oh, tell me how that happened. And there are people who are more open, people who are more closed, some who really have no time and they want to see the facts immediately. So it does depend, right? And you will never make everyone happy. So that's why people can choose how they like to get the information they need. But in my eyes, it looks this way, that what is important, it's not just the destination, but the journey. And that's also a saying probably everyone knows. And from my perspective, the story of how we get there, how we get to the data, how do we get to the results, it's all about if I want to replicate something, if I also want to create something, if I want to pursue this particular thing or achieve whatever I am willing to achieve, then I also want to understand how to get there. And how to get there, it can be a very, I would say, straightforward path with milestones like tick, 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 do this and that. But then again, we come back to the question, how does it make me feel? Am I excited about it? Do I want to do it, right? So maybe I don't feel empowered enough to do it, but someone did it and that's their story. Yeah, I can do it too, right? Or I'm interested, I want to prove, and I want to see the data. I want to prove the world that, for example, what I think or that a certain topic is very important, and I want to find the data. Why does it excite me? What kind of research do I have to do? What do I have to find? Whom do I have to meet, right? And that is the whole journey, right? So I think it is actually the fuel to get to the end result in my eyes. So in terms of the ratio, very hard to tell. Don't make it too long so that people don't lose interest, right? And I mean, from that perspective, maybe this way, always think about your audience, because if you think only about yourself, fine, maybe you get so lucky that you find people who are just like you and it's perfect. You don't need to overthink. But essentially, when we talk about storytelling, you can have these conversations with yourself in the shower if you're not singing, for example, okay? But if you're doing storytelling, you're doing this for others. So know your people, know your community and what they expect from you. That's probably what I would have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. Gordon, what about yourself and the balance for you between data and story?
I think it's more about sort of how long have you got to tell the story, or basically how much attention can you get from somebody. And I think that for any storytelling that you do, whether it's a business related story or whether it's a personal story, and this was advice that I most remember hearing from a guy called Eric Edmeades, who's a fantastic public speaker. He said, every story that you have should have different length versions of it. There should be kind of a 10-second version, a 30-second version, a 5-minute version, a half-hour version of it. And by necessity, depending how long you've got, will then have differing levels of detail and elements that you leave in or leave out. So to me, storytelling is always a mix. Again, whether it's a personal or a business story, it's a mixture of facts and emotions, but it's finding the ones that are most impactful, that get the message across, that are stickiest, as Mamed said, the things that bring that data to life. So there's always a mix of the two, even in you call them high context cultures, Nadia. So you might sort of lean more towards the facts, and the blend may vary slightly, but it's still going to be picking out the stuff that is most impactful. So a story I've told many times now, we'll give you the very short version of it. An airline client that I was working for a number of years ago, they'd had big problems with processing delays. They had an outstanding backlog of 16,000 refund requests, which were outstanding. And I remember talking to the lady in the call center that ran the call center teams, and she was genuinely on the edge of tears. She said, "It breaks my heart that this is our customers' own money and we can't give it back to them fast enough." So that's a number and an emotion and a story of a particular individual. And regardless of whether you're a high context or a low context culture, that is going to work.
Mamed, what about yourself? How do you strike the balance between data, especially when you are delivering trainings or when you are also acting with the scenarios?
Okay.
Because when you deliver a training, you also need to share some certain amount of data to support the message that you try to teach the audience, right?
Of course. Definitely, obviously. Well, I'm totally with Gordon on that one. This is a mixture. Without facts, story is empty, right? It feels empty. Without emotion, facts are forgettable, right? So if we don't keep that balance and we provide too much facts, even if these facts are, I don't know, very beautifully presented on a huge screen or a keynote with nice infographics, when it's fact after a fact after a fact, amazing, fantastic, unbelievable, right? At some point it will be boring. I believe in for every culture, right? Even though that is true, there are cultures who would prefer you telling them the whole background first and then getting to conclusion, or starting from the conclusion and then presenting them all of the facts that support that. But still, yeah, the balance is important. So yeah, too much facts, it is boring. But also, if it's too much emotions, that feels manipulative, fluffy, right? So we have to keep that balance. The best practice is to use these facts as a skeleton and emotion as the flesh. Again, if we take an example of providing these stats, I don't know, this feature reduced downtime by 40%. So this is a fact. But then you add, which meant our clients slept better at night, knowing that they wouldn't lose customers. That is emotion, right? So facts prove, but emotions touch, move, right? They together make this complete message.
And I think also this is quite significant that we shouldn't overwhelm the audience with too much emotions. Yeah, we don't want to sometimes leave them crying or leave them scared or leave them like, okay, it can be thought provoking, but not necessarily leaving them, hanging you have the end of a TV series with a cliffhanger at the very end, and people are, biting their nails. What will happen next? I think we also need to make a nice summary, a nice conclusion for the story that we deliver. But I have a question in that case. Nadia, you've mentioned something very interesting about the authenticity and being, if you will be yourself, you will find followers, right? So talking more about the balance. So how to find that right connection with the audience? How to what are your ways of being authentic with the audience and just being yourself? Because sometimes we need to adapt. We need to be a chameleon to attract the attention of the audience to whom we talk.
I don't know if I have a secret sauce, but I will try to tell you. So, okay, it depends again what kind of person you are. So there are people, and I'm not that person, and I'm also not saying that this is bad to begin with, but there are people who go all in and they share everything. They even overshare. And sometimes when I'm observing them somewhere over social media, I see that they share everything about themselves, right? I don't know what they eat, what they drink, or for women, how they put on makeup. Well, that's my daily story. Let me tell you this, let me tell you that. That's fine. And that does have an audience, and that's great. If they feel like doing that, if they are comfortable, that's okay, and that works. Now, there are people, for example, like me, who share things to a certain extent in terms of my authentic self. So obviously, probably my day-to-day would be quite dull because I really work a lot, contrary to public opinion often, who think that I'm all the time having tons of fun and traveling and just taking 2 million pictures, which is true, but then it's probably 30% of my life. And I share that because that is the part that inspires me and also inspires my audience of how you can shape your day, how you can shape your reality, I do it this way, that I always try to share a personal story, but then combine it with some facts. Okay, so I always tackle a particular topic that is very important for me. Like in this case, obviously, it's everything referring to the future of work, remote work, hybrid work, flexible working, remote working laws, and this and that. And that somehow connects to a moment that I had in my personal life, what happened to me, a story that I heard from one of my clients, maybe, right? I never disclose what client, if current client, former client, because I can't do that. And sometimes they're even nasty. I'm like seriously, I want to tell the world because someone has to, but I never say who that is or who that was. And that is me. But then there may also be other people who won't want to, I will use the word expose, but it's not the right word, but they won't do that, but they will just write about things, for example, that are also close to their heart, meaning that they're going to share their opinions about a particular problem, about a particular situation, how it made them feel. They will add a personal story, but not that deeply personal, like they don't want to overshare, and they very much will separate all of their personal experiences with like from everything that's business related. And then they will maybe take a look at the topic from different perspectives. They will share different examples, external examples, but not their own examples, but they build their authenticity by sharing these experiences and being the source that people want to listen to. So but again, everyone has their own style, and the fact that when we talk about storytelling, it's not like you have to be a person who is extroverted and you will suddenly do whatever. When we're talking about someone's appearance, for example, in social media, and not just that, but even with presentations, public speaking, everything, you really can build up an amazing, compelling story without saying anything about yourself, you know? You can't do that. So it all depends who has what kind of style, in my eyes.
Mamed, you are teaching people a lot of soft skill at EPAM, but also as a director, how do you make the outcome become, more authentic? Like when it comes to, especially I'm interested in that movie industry, how to make that story there more realistic? Because people will see a movie, they will think, oh, it's all about script, all about the play, all about the actors, but then it is you as the director who brings it all to life, and it's your vision that the actors try to compel and tell the story. So how to transfer that?
Oh, that is a skill. So yeah, that needs to be practiced for a longer time. I am humble enough to say that I still didn't reach the peaks of that skill, and it's not that I can look, from the peak, from the mountain of my experience back to 40 years of shooting movies and saying, actually, you have to do so and so.
And modesty opens the long list of your quality.
Okay, thank you. You're very kind. So, yeah, that made me think really. A movie is a movie. There are actors, right? So acting there is expected. And this is a form of art. So the message will be more subtle in that movie, just like in any art, right? And this is a skill to either, it depends on how complex that movie will be. Will you make it very accessible for audiences and then risk being judged for being too much direct and straightforward, or will you go with something experimental, right? You will put a lot of questions, not give them any answers, and then you will cause frustration with an audience, right? Saying we don't get it, what was that about? But you still believe that this is the art, this is how it should be. If people don't understand, that's fine. This is part of the experience. But there are some people who will value it, and even if it's only a couple of person, that was worth it, right? So it depends. The movies are not similar. They are super, super different. I actually had this experience. Finally, actually, I believe my first short film that was where I was a producer, actually, my cousin was a director. It was experimental. And me being from a very small traditionalist region, where it's also a post-war region. I come from Chechen Republic. So yeah, a lot of things were not developed back then. And we, I mean, decided to, I mean, I believe even cinema theaters were just appearing. We decided to make this show of our experimental short film. Um, and a cousin of mine being a fan of, I don't know, David Lynch, of all of these, super unobvious messages in the movies, the symbolism that blow your head and don't understand anything style, he pulled it out, yeah. But and that was an interesting experience, yeah. I remember even presenting that movie. It was live, so I was presenting in the front of the audience, giving them background. They were all excited, but they were expecting something pretty much straightforward, being that audience, which is not too experienced in all of these. And then they got something Tarkovsky-like,
different.
Yeah, and some people were laughing in the audience, with every new unexplained story. Some people were not getting it, but being still polite. But some people really, really loved it, and they found the symbols and they found the answers because they were even in the poster of a movie. What actually happened in that movie. There was an answer to that, and that was a very satisfying feeling, right? As for this again, balance authenticity and performance. If it's not a movie, if you are presenting, for example, authenticity builds trust, right? If you are not authentic, people will sense it that you're fake. But performance, it's not acting here, right? It is about energy, clarity, engagement. So we want to think of it like this. It's authentic message, skillfully delivered. Want to be real in content and perform in delivery. Both matter.
Gordon, what about yourself and the authenticity of your initiatives? How do you strike the balance there, and how do you win the audience over? And you're muted, just a note.
I had a laptop issue, which is why I disappeared off screen for a few minutes. The laptop decided to crap out. So as anybody that's watched any of my talks or trainings will know, I'm pretty much an open book. Kind of whether you met me in a social situation or whether you meet me at work, you're going to pretty much get the same person. There's not much that I won't talk about. So my personal style is really very open. So there's lots of stuff I talk about. I've done talks within EPAM about, mental health, my own struggles with that, discovering I'm ADHD, talking about, issues that we've had with my son, various things. So for me, my style of authenticity tends to be very much kind of leading with vulnerability. And this isn't just for, talks or presentations or trainings and things like this. I've done this and do this with, retros and daily stand-ups and sitting on a go live call with people at 2:00 in the morning, as ways of building relationships, by kind of sharing a bit about myself or an experience, or it could be, something, saying perhaps it's mental health, or perhaps it's a book that I've read or something like that, and talking about that, other things I'm interested in, because what I find is that helps with that connection aspect that you were talking about, Nadia, which is that if you want other people to open up and share more about themselves, lead by example. Share something about you. As you say, not everybody is comfortable doing that, and certainly not to the extent that I do it. But that doesn't make my way right and somebody else's wrong. It's just that's me. That's my personal choice. That's how I go about it. But authenticity can be both. It's something genuinely that happened to me. It can be telling a story about somebody else or a client or whatever, as you were talking about, that did actually happen. I think where you get into trouble is if you're just making stuff up, unless you kind of it's obviously, or it's kind of well known, it's an apocryphal story. It's not necessarily something that happened. It's a fable, essentially. It's something that illustrates a point, but not. Yeah, so I guess authenticity is not not misleading people, not fooling people. If it's a film and it's obviously a work of fiction, that's fine. They're there to be fooled, if you like, and they know it's not real. But if it's anything that is giving the impression that it is fact-based, it should be.
And I think also, after confabulating a lot of stories, you might lose track of what you said to whom, and it's just so much easier to be straightforward with it. And
yeah.
I think you touched a very interesting point. I remember many years ago, one of our account managers, Niv Dobosh, mentioned on one of the meetings that, especially during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, reading a good book, eating a good meal, watching a good movie is a great way to build connection with one another, because if we are locked at homes, we are remote by designs, we are separated from one another. Great way to build connection and great way to just share that at the end of the day, we are not only here to deliver user stories, functionalities, tasks, items, but we are also here to enjoy our company, our day-to-day activities, also as people. But also would like to refer to one thing that Nadia mentioned about being an introvert, and some of the members of our audience might feel that they are shy, they are introverted IT professionals. So can you give some of the tips on how, if you are an introverted person, you can build up confidence in yourself and in the stories that you deliver? So Mamed, maybe let's start with you.
Sorry. Good. Yeah, Mamed.
I'm a gentleman. Nadia, go ahead.
Oh.
And again, thrown under the bus and put on the spot.
Exactly. Well, I was relieved
No bad
because
intentions.
I thought, what a question. And I thought, okay.
On the bright side, being the first person to answer the question gives you the opportunity to, pick up the low-hanging fruits and say the easiest thing, and then the remaining people will have to struggle with the remaining points.
I'll give it a try. Okay, no judgment. So I think that if you have something that you're passionate about, or something that interests you, or something that you're just an expert, and within IT, and even if it's okay, you said shy IT experts, yes, or shy IT people. So if they want to practice storytelling on what they do at work, I assume that they know what they do at work and that is useful, which is why they're working. So I hope they like it, not despise it with all their heart, because that would be suffering, and I don't think they would want to build up their storytelling based on suffering, okay? Unless they maybe have something else. I don't know. People do gardening, fishing, knitting. I have no idea. I haven't seen an IT guy doing knitting, but maybe there is someone. We don't know that, right? So this is something that is already interesting for you. You have a story, either because the product is interesting, the software is interesting, or there's just something that you want to share because you want to share your knowledge with others because you think it's useful. So then you can describe a process by adding the story, not necessarily overexposing yourself because you're so shy in that context, or it's a passion of yours maybe, right? So you can just start writing about it and sharing, well, day-to-day experiences maybe that you had, with it. So I would start that way. So it doesn't have to be this way that you suddenly do a LinkedIn live and say, hello, this is my name. I want to tell you how it made me feel. This will be my story. You don't have to do that, okay? But slowly just start kind of like sharing hints about the things that are interesting for you that you want to share with others, right? Within that context. I hope that was good advice. Let's see.
Gordon, what about yourself and your advice?
Yeah, definitely. And I would kind of extend slightly what Nadia said, because it's giving people kind of the prod, or that sort of gentle push to do exactly what you've just said. And there's one of the kind of lunch and learn sessions I've done, you'll find it in the video portal, about creating effective remote relationships. And it's the techniques that I've used for doing that, quite often in retros. So one of them would be, for the next one, I want everybody to find a photo of you doing something that you're passionate about. Now, that could be a hobby. It could be spending time with the kids. It could be whatever. Just bring that. I want you to share the photo and just tell us about it for a minute or two. And I've got two kind of quick examples from that. One was a guy who the photo he put up was of him taking his cat for a walk. It took me a second to figure out what I was looking at, but yes, there's a cat on a leash taking it for a walk because he lived in Lviv, if I remember correctly, lived in an apartment building, cat couldn't get out. So every weekend he would take the cat on the train out into the countryside and go and take the cat for a walk. And that sort of got quite a lot of laughs and a bit of interest in that story. But the other one was a young female QA who was very nervous. She was worried that her English wasn't particularly good. She wasn't really very comfortable about speaking up in group settings. But the story she showed was of her playing the violin, actually, with an orchestra. The rest of her team, who worked in the same office and had worked with her for a number of years, had no idea she played the violin. But she started to talk about that and she came alive. And you could see the passion come through. All right, the English was still a little bit lumpy, but suddenly that didn't matter. And what she realized through doing that exercise was actually she was perfectly understandable. There was nothing wrong with her English. And she actually ended up speaking more in meetings and things afterwards. But it's suddenly you see a different side of somebody. I mentioned go live calls. We had a guy in a project I was doing about 18 months ago, and we ended up, I actually bought the sci-fi book that he recommended because we got onto that subject, and just giving people those opportunities to share more about themselves or do a scavenger hunt, bring us, find an item that you bought on holiday and then tell you ask them questions. Where did you buy that? Why did you buy that? Why was that interesting?
Mm-hmm. We did kind of like a similar thing on the retro. We used to call this retro party after each retrospective meeting, and just especially when the pandemic started, show us your home setup. For example, how did you manage to transform the work environment into your own home? Or show us the picture of you as a 5-year-old chubby kid with chubby cheeks, and just have a conversation about that as well, right? Like where the picture was taken, or just like you mentioned, give the push, give a bit of encouragement, and it really doesn't matter whether your English is good or bad. It's just about the fact of connecting with one another and giving the opportunity and the stage, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mamed, what about yourself? What advice would you give to those people who might feel shy of stepping out of their comfort zone?
How do you call it? Deal with the remaining points when you're lost in line, right? Okay. But yeah, jokes aside, I absolutely love the answers of co-experts today. And yeah, maybe a few more some techniques from my side. Also using the opportunity to promote a lot of great trainings on presentation skills at EPAM, right? So confidence, it comes from the structure. Stories, they have structure, right? So there are a lot of frameworks that you can use, be it like problem, solution, benefit, power mentals, pyramid, star, you name it, right? So whenever you research, you go for a training or you do it by your own and find these structures and you use them when you prepare, that gives you that feeling of control. You know where you are, you know what's left, and also you don't feel lost, right? So know your story arc. Also, yeah, the practice, this shyness, right? The trick is to put yourself in that stressful environment, but in a safe environment, right? Practice in these low stakes environments, maybe team meetings, friends, colleagues, start from that. I also like that story of a famous mixed martial artist. I'm not sure if I want to name him because he's a bad reputation now, but he's a very, very well known. So he had a technique before going, actually any athlete, going to the match, I mean, to the fight that is about to happen, and dozens of thousands of people watch it in the audience, and then millions of people watch you. I have a lot of professional athletes within my friends, and it never happens that they are never stressed. It never happens. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. Within the speakers as well, right? Within the great professional, advanced speakers, there are still these emotions. We are people. So what differs the unexperienced beginner speaker presenter from a very experienced speaker is how well you can deal with these emotions, right? So this is how you learn. This is how you equip yourself with frameworks. This is how you practice. It will happen, and you are ready for it. So what was that mixed martial artist doing? he was going through all of that way where you feel the most pressure, because once the ring bells, it all goes away, right? You are on the adrenaline, but before that, huge amount of pressure on you. So he would be in this room for preparation alone, right? When nobody's there, he would tape his hands, then he would walk down the corridor, then he would go to the ring, right? So next time when he had this super stressful situation, the amount of stress decreases drastically, because these things are not new for you. You've already been here. You walked that down. You know what's going to happen. This is familiar, right? And yeah, a last thing I wanted to add is okay, just remember the storytelling, it's not like performance, right? Storytelling, it's just sharing your experience with purpose. Try to reframe it, that will also help. Actually, introverts often make great storytellers because they prepare so deeply and focus on clarity, right? And last thing I wanted to mention is the transparency effect, right? When you think everything that's inside you is visible. Actually, on one of the programs, even before I joined EPAM, from my colleagues' stories, I remember we had an experiment when there were presenters. It was a training on presenting skills. And then there was this practice part. It was live, face-to-face, where people would be presenting as their end product from the training, and then give a feedback about their own emotions. How do they feel if these emotions were stopping them from delivering a message, disrupting them? But also they didn't know that audience also had this feedback tool to tell if they feel that they were too emotional, they were stressed, and that the message wasn't delivered efficiently. So I believe that 90% of speakers who were students of this course, they said, yeah, we didn't do well, okay, let's say it so. But then actually it was the opposite within the audience. Very, very small, I believe like 4% were of them who said, yeah, actually here it didn't work, but everything else, it was either okay or insignificant. So we always think that emotions, feelings, that thoughts that are inside us are visible, right? When, I don't know, romantic feelings are there, we believe that this other person actually reads all of them. No, they're not, right? So, and also, the main thing is that audience is not expecting your failure. Audience wants you to succeed, right? And not to judge. Yeah, this is what we want to remember.
Yeah.
And I think you've touched a very, very important couple of points which I would like to address, that about the practice. I sometimes tell on my training about public speaking that learning about public speaking from the training is like learning to ride a bicycle from the YouTube tutorial. Like you will be able to learn something, you will see the professionals do it, but the best way to learn how to ride a bicycle is to get on one, and okay, you will fall several times, you will have scratches and bruises, but in the end you will get the balance just about right, and you will be able to ride the bicycle efficiently, right? So that's why I think having this opportunity, at EPAM, you mentioned about the structure, problem, solution, benefit. Well, I sometimes like to make this joke. At EPAM, we don't have problems, we have opportunities. Yeah, so let's take it to the next level and let's just focus on the opportunities that life throws at us, and let's try to make the most of it, and not to be our own worst enemies, thinking that, oh, actually, I'm about to appear on the stage. Everyone will see that I'm nervous. So I will start saying, apologies in advance. I'm very nervous when I will deliver this talk. No, like don't build that expectation. Don't start the conversation this way, because people there are to encourage you. Although that said, I remember I studied technical physics at the university, and one of the subjects was quantum mechanics. And when the professor asked us, "Do we understand?" and there was like a whole group, the whole class of students just nodding their head, yes, we understand. Okay, he needs to take a step back, because there's nothing worse for the speaker than to see that blind stare, no connection between the eyes and the brain, and just politely nodding to give encouragement. Yeah, so sometimes we need to be aware of that aspect as well. And talking about this, we know there are no experienced sailors on the calm sea, and we learn the best from the mistakes. So maybe you've seen someone, or maybe you had some mistakes in the past that you've learned from, that our audience might learn from as well, because life is too short to make all the mistakes by yourself. So maybe some of our audience members will be able to learn from your mistakes or from your colleagues' mistakes that are easily avoidable. So are there any of those that you've experienced in your life? Mamed, again, maybe let's start with you.
Thank you. Well, actually plenty of them. I don't know where should I start. But as you said, yeah, a small creative task for our audience. Whose quote is that? I never failed. I just learned 8,000 ways of how that does not work, right? So yeah.
Sometimes our colleagues are saying that, I haven't made a mistake, but I know a colleague who did, and just to appear more perfect, especially on the assessment sessions.
Authenticity, remember? People know when you're fake.
I have this friend who has a problem,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That friend, a friend of mine. So I'll just pick one, I believe, because we don't have much time left. A mistake was actually connected to me presenting actually that very movie I was talking about for the first time, because it was my first short and it was my first presentation of a movie. So we had a letter from a director who was not in the country yet, and we planned to read it out. Do not do that. Never. Right? Don't read something for 15 minutes in front of the audience, even if it's a super touching letter. And but the mistake was the following. Because of my perfectionism, I really wanted that letter to be read. That was the plan. I was, envisioning itself before preparing for the presentation. But then they didn't deliver it on time. The event started and I was on the stage and I had to start and I had to improvise. I did improvise. I did improvise well because probably I was sounding very natural, authentic, probably to some extent vulnerable, like offering myself, being honest with the audience, and actually delivered that message that was in that letter. And we were not sure actually if they will deliver it at all. But then they delivered it right when I finished. So because it was finally here, I started reading that letter as well. It was different from my improvisation, but the message was the same. And that was a mistake. It doesn't matter, that the letter is here. It doesn't matter that your improvisation is not as smooth as something you planned. You have to be ready to sacrifice something, right? You have to be ready to throw away something if you believe this is like duplicating itself. It will just take their times. And also remember that you in your head have this perfect picture of how it should be delivered. You know all the background, everything that's behind the curtains. But audience doesn't. Audience takes you like from the blank sheet of paper, right? And everything you do is much more efficient than it is in your head because you have something to compare. They don't, right? So remember this, and it will be totally fine if you will actually sacrifice some things and sometimes just trust your intuition. You connect with the audience, you feel it, you feel that everything's cool. Do not try to invent something new after that as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be from my side.
All right, thank you so much, Gordon.
Oh, I think anybody that's done any amount of public speaking will have made most of these mistakes. I know I certainly have. So, not checking your tech. I had this, unfortunately, my laptop died just before I was due to do a training last Thursday, actually on storytelling and presentation skills, and thought I managed to get it all sorted out, start to run the presentation, and one of the interactive elements, I didn't have the right plug-in on the other laptop and it didn't work. So simple enough things, make sure you check. You said about, Mamed, earlier about kind of rehearsing, trying to, if you can, go and stand out on the stage in the room where you're going to present, if you're doing stuff online. So anything that you can do to get yourself familiar so that stuff doesn't catch you out, make sure that you know how to plug things in when you get into the room that you're going to be speaking in, because they're all things that will kind of knock you off your stride that you can just solve, and then it's something that you don't need to worry about or don't need to think about whilst you're doing it. But the best piece of advice I'll give people for improving and catching those mistakes is record yourself. Every possible opportunity that you get, whenever you give a presentation or a talk or anything like that, try and make sure it's recorded. we do most stuff online these days. It tends to be the default. But I remember my very first presentation skills training with my very first job working for IBM. So this would have been back in the mid-late 1990s. And they videoed us with an old school kind of camcorder. And I realized when I watched it back, I had loose change in my pocket. I had coins in my pocket. And through the entire time I was talking, I had my hand in my pocket and I was jingling the coins and playing with the coins. You could both hear it, and obviously you could see my hand moving as well. That was very distracting for the audience and was very obvious when I watched the video back afterwards. So it will feel weird. The very first time and the first few times you watch and listen to yourself back, you will go, oh my God, do I sound like that? And oh my God, do I actually look like that? Well, yes, you do. That's what everybody else is seeing. You will get used to it, I promise. And then you can kind of assess yourself dispassionately as if you were watching somebody else. So all of the mistakes that we make, record yourself, watch it back, and you will be able to self-correct much quicker.
Yeah, as in my head, I always sound so amazing. And then I hear my recording and it's like, is it really me? Nadia, what about yourself?
Lovely, yeah.
Oh, again, big part.
I will pick up maybe on both of you because you're saying record yourself and look at yourself, or you're a perfectionist, Mamed. So yeah, that's definitely me in that context. But what I want to say is, yeah, sometimes I record things or I watch things, and then because of being a perfectionist, I'm like, no, I imagined that a different way. But then, with time, I come to this conclusion, it is what it is. So what? So you know what I mean? So, this is who I am. This is what I really said. This is the way I look. I'm sorry.
Again, authenticity.
Exactly. So,
absolutely.
I can't help myself anymore. Yeah, no, but to tackle this question maybe from a different perspective, because I have an anecdote still. I have to share it. Once a long time ago when I was still.
Story.
Yeah. It's silly, but it's something that is always in my mind when someone asks this question. Oh, what was your biggest failure or mistake or whatever? A long time ago when I was still doing many recruitment processes, I obviously was interviewing many candidates, and so once I had a candidate, I'll never forget that. For a managerial role, he came to the meeting, and I had a question because it was about leading a team and everything. And I said, well, so can you tell me what's one of the failures or your weaker points or mistakes you made and how you solved them? And he's sitting there looking at me. I never make any mistakes. Like, okay. Like, can you elaborate? No, there's nothing to talk about because I am a very conscious person and I know what I do. Okay, why are you so aggressive? So he didn't get the job. I thought, well, that's definitely not a manager that we need, but good that I asked this question. Now, tackling your question from a different perspective about my mistakes, I could write a book. But what I'm trying to say is if you don't try and if you don't move on, then that's the only time when you don't make any mistakes, okay? So let me go back to when I started, especially with my online presence. There are moments when I sometimes check out things I posted years ago and I would love to delete them. Seriously. Yeah. Exactly. Probably everyone here has the same experience. I look at it and it makes me feel pitiful, really. But then I think, but it's part of me, Probably the first video, the first recording, the first post, everything that you do will be bad when you look at it, years later, okay? But you have to start, okay? So, and there's the saying that I always repeat to myself that you did the best you could within the circumstances and with the tools that you had, okay? And that's the way to look at it. So don't be your worst enemy. Don't judge yourself. Just do it. And then switch off your laptop and pretend it's not out there and then come back a few hours later and see what happened. That's what I sometimes do, to be very honest.
This is actually a very good advice, and this is something what I did back in 2017. I did a internal EPAM conference talk titled "Be the Change You Want to See in the World," and then I did in 2022 very similar talk, but with the same title actually. But I could see in both the materials, the speech, the tone, the presentation, how much progress I've made over the course of 5 years with delivering quite a similar topic. As we are coming closer to an end of today's event, I will once again share the screen and I will give our audience the opportunity to go to Menti and type in the code 61188871, or I will also post the link to Menti for our audience. And I would actually like our audience to select what will be the topic of the episode 14. But as we wait for the votes to come in, the last question which I have for you is the question which I like to end our meetings usually is, knowing what you know right now, with all the years of experience that you have, what type of advice would you give to yourself at the start of your career when it comes to the skill of storytelling? Gordon, maybe let's start with you on this one.
Do more and do it as often as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, tell more stories. Just to extend that slightly, because people kind of go, I'm not comfortable telling stories in a business context. We all have stories that we all tell on a regular basis. You know, how did you join the company? How did you meet your partner? How did you end up getting a dog? You know, that funny thing the kids did when they were younger. Practice your storytelling there. Try and improve every time you tell that story to get a better reaction from the people that you're telling it to.
Okay, thank you so much. Nadia?
Be authentic and don't try to please everyone. When I initially started, I thought, how am I going to make everyone happy? The corporate world, the startup world, the digital nomads, these and those. And I'm like, okay, how do I tailor my narrative? You have to, from the storytelling perspective, so that your audience you have to have the buy-in of your audience, but then just be yourself. And that is actually the feeling that you can give other people. It's your authenticity. And don't be afraid to do that.
Okay.
Mamed?
I'll also drop a one-liner. Why not? Don't just tell me what you built. Tell me why it matters. Right? So don't just describe what you built, share why it matters. Every story should answer that question. Why should the audience care, right? Try to shift that focus from your work to the value of others. To be precise, to fit in the time, that would be the advice.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing the advice with our audience today. Actually, as I can see, we already have some of the votes coming in, and it seems to me that the topic of the episode 14 will be the topic of decision making. So thank you everyone who casted their vote in today's episode. I'm sure we will find great experts to cover the topic of episode 14 about decision making. So with that said, there is nothing more for me to say but to thank you, Mamed, Nadia, and Gordon, for joining me today on today's conversation. I do hope that our audience enjoyed the show, and I do hope that if there will be any interesting topic for you in the upcoming future, that you will also decide to join once again to be our expert in the future episodes as well.
Thanks a lot. That was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Next time. Take care. Have a great
day.
Take care.
Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye.